Hey, John here from John's Do It Yourself. This is chapter 2 in building your own sea chest. So if you haven't seen chapter 1 yet, you need to roll back and catch that one first so you're caught up. In this chapter, we're going to be building the coin rack that will be housed under the actual shadow box. So I know you don't want to hear me talk anymore, so let's get cutting.
Okay, so before you start building your coin rack, I'm going to assume your box might be a little bit different than mine. What you need to do is go back to your box and measure the actual distance across from the top. And we're going to start with those parameters. Your first tendency is to jump right in and just cut a square to build your coin rack on. I'm going to suggest against that. And what I want you to do is we're going to start building the frame that's going to go around this. So using knotty pine as the base, we will start with real actual oak and we'll cut out the frame that's going to go around it. So going back to that first measurement you made from the top of the box, we're going to cut these pieces just a little bit more so you have some to work with. And eventually we'll have 45-degree angles on each side. So give yourself a little playroom and cut it a little bit bigger than your box. And our first step here is to take one of those pieces and rip it in half. Now it needs to be at least a minimum of 3 inches wide. Now you can go back to the miter saw and cut your 45-degree angles. You can still give yourself a little bit of playroom here, but just make sure that the board pieces after cut with 45-degree angles are still pretty tight in the box. And because I want this coin rack display removable, what I want to do here is create a couple of handles on each side. So these first 2 pieces will be my side pieces, and that's why it's important that they fit tightly within the box. So the first line I draw is actually the height of the bottom of the base of the coin rack. That way the coin holders, or the parts you'll be gripping or grabbing, will not extend down below into the actual base of the board. Now you can actually cut larger, or I should say wider boards here, but just remember that this coin rack will be going under a complete shadow box. So you want to keep them as low as possible. But still, this is up to you, and it depends on how wide or how much space you had between your coin rack rails in the box and the bottom of the actual shadow box rail. So you have that information. You need to make sure you go back and take those measurements and make sure these handles won't protrude above that. So knowing that, you can make any design you want. I'm just going to draw out simple handles here. They're kind of just basic in nature, but you can make any elaborate design if you want to get fancy, or even take them to a CNC router if you have it and make them all kinds of designed. Now take the piece you just cut and make sure you align the inside portions of the 45-degree angle, not the top portions. And then mark your knotty pine. This will allow your knotty pine to fit inside your frame that you're building out of the oak. And of course the oak is fit to the box. Now with that mark, go back to the miter saw and cut yourself 2 pieces of knotty pine to that length. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the joint long ways. That way it is still, all pieces are supported and the joint is not in the center where the pressure will be on the center of the board. And that way you can realign your sides to make sure that notch to notch is fitting and that the total base of this piece will fit inside your 45-degree angles. Now, to make sure your handles are perfectly aligned and the same on both sides and centered, what I want you to do is take it to the bandsaw or a jigsaw and just cut out one side of your actual handle. Now you can go back to your second piece, lay that piece that you just cut on top of it as a template, draw your lines, and then cut those out. You can also flip it over to make sure both sides are perfectly aligned. Now that your handles are starting to take shape, grab a drill bit that will allow you to put your jigsaw blade inside of it, and then proceed to cut out the center of each of your handles. And again, just like you did before, once you have one handle cut out, lay it on top of the other and make sure you trace out in case there's any deviation from the original one you drew. This way, both handles will be identical. Now what we're going to do next is actually join the base together. I'm going to take some biscuits and a biscuit joiner, and I'm just going to do some quick holes, and we're going to join this together. Yes, I know this is overkill. You could probably even use pocket jigs. Anything will work here, but I just thought that giving it a little more support with the glue from a biscuit joiner would really make it strong. Now, but the key here is still to make it long ways and not short ways, so the actual joint is hovering over the center of the box. You want it in between so your rails keep it and give it strength. So remember, your pieces don't have to be two full knotty pine pieces. They can actually be shortened. So whatever you want your coin rack to be in length, you can go ahead and cut it down and then join it together. But here we're just going to join it together, me playing with glue and another tool, because I just, any excuse to use a tool. So while the base piece is glued up and waiting to dry, we're going to go back and grab our handles, and I'm going to just take a small round over bit and I'm going to put it in the router, and I'm going to run the handles through that to make all the visible top pieces of the handle round. And that way, even when you're grabbing it, there's no real edges or sharp parts of the handle. Everything will be nice and rounded. So now that your base piece is dry, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to it and we're going to find the very center of it. And we're going to try to line out what we think the coin grooves should be spaced. So right here is just a little bit of trial and error. I'm going to take a piece that I think is 1/4 of an inch and use it as a template. I'm just going to mark the center of the board, and then I'm going to draw quick lines. And then we're just going to keep growing from there and see what looks good. But you have to start in the center. That way, even if you stop short, both ends on each end of the board will be even. So what I actually decided was that the distance between each groove that I cut is going to be 1.5 inches. So from 1.5 inches, I still need to take into account that each groove will be 1/4 of an inch. So I just use a board as a cheat, and I grow out the lines until I get to the end of the board. From there, we're just going to keep cutting out our slots. They're about 1/4 of an inch deep and 1/4 of an inch wide. Nothing too fancy, and there are no angles here. These are straight up and down cuts where you just cut all your grooves. We're going to sand this nice and smooth, and then we're going to spray paint it with some black spray paint. And it's pretty smooth. You can go ahead and spray paint it. Just the bottom. Don't waste any time or paint on any other portion of this square. The next step is we're just going to cut some strips of the knotty pine into smaller strips, and all we're really doing is making some backstops for the coins. The coins will be sitting in the actual slots, the 1/4 inch slots that we just cut out of the base, but you still want to have a little bit of a backstop to them to hold them and make them stand upright a little bit better. This way we can actually control the angle, so when you're looking down at them in the box, they can actually be at a lower angle to present more of the coin in the display. So once your baseboard is dry, you can bring it back in and you can grab your backstops and start aligning them. Now if you have a few coins here, you could go ahead and lay them out and put them in the slots and see how the backstops distance from the slot can change the angle of the coin. But this is just for aesthetics. So once I figure out exactly what angle I want my coins, I go ahead and put a little bead of glue on each backstop, and then I quickly just staple them down. That should be all you need. And as you see, I've gone for a little bit more of an angle, so if the shadow box is removed and you're looking down on the coins, you'll be able to see the fronts of them pretty visibly. So after all the glue is dry, let's get this thing felted. Just cut yourself a nice little piece of felt that is well hanging over all the edges of your square. Then go ahead and grab a piece of scrap wood, or you can even use the handles that we've cut earlier like I did, because they're 1/4 inch wide, and start gluing down the felt. So what you're going to do is you're going to spray a little adhesive behind it, and then you're going to push the slots, the boards into the slots so it gets good connection all the way down. Now, if I had to do this over again, I probably would have cut enough pieces to fill all the slots, so I could have left them in there until they all dried. But I cut about 6 of them, and I just kept rotating them across as I went, just to keep all the felt pressed all the way down. And all you do is pull back, you throw a little glue down, and then you put the next piece in and make sure it's pressed all the way into position. So at this point, with all your felt in place, you can make sure that nothing's protruding up and it doesn't keep any of the coins from laying in their slots perfectly. So here I'm just checking out to see how they look. You see how I have them more of at an angle? So if the shadow box is removed and you're looking down through the top of the box, you'll be able to see most of the faces of these coins. Okay, so now lift up the felt so you're good and under it. You don't want to get any of the Gorilla Glue on top of it. So I'm down below it, spraying up at an angle, but you want to get it onto the wood right below it, and then make some relief cuts. And what you're going to do is you're going to bend over the felt onto the Gorilla Glue that you just sprayed onto the side. Then we're going to take a board and we're going to clamp the board so this felt is really, really tight and has a good seal to it. But it'll all be hidden underneath the side handles once we attach them. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and use the side handle pieces when you clamp it together. But I just went ahead and waited till it dried, pulled off the pieces I was using, and then added the handles, and I stapled them down. Now I know I never edit out my mistakes, and if you're looking right now, you're probably catching the fact that I don't even have these pieces that are going around the box stained, and I think at some point right here I realized that I don't have it stained. So I recommend you stain them before you put them on, because it will get tricky and difficult and you don't want to get stain on your felt. So at some point here I realized that I haven't even cut my long pieces yet for the frame, and so this is where I actually noticed that I screwed up. So I took these pieces to the miter saw because I had just marked them based on the other frames. Now we hadn't cut these earlier because the felt might make them not fit properly. So what I did is I waited till the side pieces were on, because the felt gave them like a 1/16 of an inch on each side, before I cut these pieces to fit. But then I just took them to the miter saw, cut them so they were a tight fit, and then I ran them through the router. I gave them that round beveled look like I did with the handle sides. And then of course this time I did not forget to stain these. So I do a quick staining before I apply them. And as you can see, I had to go back and try to figure out how I was going to stain the other pieces because they were already attached. I wasn't actually going to pull them off. I didn't want to do something like that. So I'm trying to make up a way. So what I did is I took a paper towel and put a screwdriver inside the paper towel, and I just kept dabbing it in there. I didn't want to do too much and get it on the black felt or cause any kind of stain on the felt. And once the other pieces are dry, then you can just take a little bit of wood glue on the corners, and then we're just going to brad or staple these into place. Okay, so once the glue on your frame dries, you're going to go ahead and grab a sander. You're going to protect it. You don't want to get sawdust on your felt, so cover it up nicely. And then we're just going to kind of round over the edges so they're not so unaligned. And then we're going to put a little bit of stain on them, and we'll pretty much be done at this point. And once your stain dries, you can basically load up your coin rack with all your coins and see how it looks. If you ask me, it looks like a serving tray for actual military coins. Pretty cool. So since we actually used the box itself to build the frame of the coin display, it fits nice and snug in there. And then of course you can slide it across, which allows you to have the open space if you needed to put something taller in there that could go up all the way to the bottom of the shadow box, which we will be building next. So I need everybody to find chapter 3 and we'll start building this shadow box. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also, so you don't miss chapter 3, hit that notification button.